Today we'll be talking about more of The Last of Us, the potential of a sequel, potential of the DLC, and also the potential of multiplayer. The game obviously was an amazing game, but we'll be talking about the sequel and what the future is for Naughty Dog. Let me know in the comments your opinions. I'm talking with GhostRobo again. Also got some multiplayer in the background. I had a fairly good match. It wasn't an amazing match. I had a few bad shots, but overall it's quite a good match. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And we'll go straight into the recording. See you guys later. Bye.
First off, let's start with just sequel talk right off the bat. I know that some people are a little bit wary of Naughty Dog delving back into the same world, but let's just suppose that they do. They've registered those two domains for Last of Us 2 and Last of Us 3. Where do you think they should take this series, should they choose to continue it?
I think they have to continue the two characters, don't they? I mean, we're so attached to Ellie and Joel as a character. I think they have to continue that story in some form, whether it's like the Fireflies going after them or something, or just... It's got to extend that storyline for me. I don't think bringing in two new characters is going to be a challenge to like really get that attached to them again. I'm so attached to those characters now. I want to see what happens really.
I think that's a really good point. And I was trying to think of games that, you know, maintain the same world and sort of the same lore, but then switch out the main characters. And I couldn't really come up with any very successful examples. You know, if you think to Uncharted, basically Drake was the face of that game, and the reason people were really into the stories for the most part was his adventures. And I think you're very right that it has to be at least one of them. And I assume that if they're going to dump one of the characters, they dump Joel and keep Ellie, just because she's younger and has that big connection.
I mean, say we go to the future and we're Ellie now. That's going to be worryingly going to go towards Tomb Raider, though, isn't it? Do you think it's going to be like, I don't know,
typical
like
girl
Ellie,
character
like
game?
Yeah,
I guess it depends what they do, because, you know, right now she's at a very young point, so there's none of that whatever you have going on in Tomb Raider or stuff like that. But if they do advance her and say, oh, now she's 25, and are they going to run into a trap of like over sexualizing her and making it just this typical female adventure game? I don't think they would, just because it's Naughty Dog. They've never done a female lead, though, as far as I'm aware.
No, just like very off characters. Like we had Chloe. She was slightly a sexual character, but it wasn't like putting your face too much.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think they're the kind of people that would let it fall off the deep end. What I think is possibly more interesting, as well as the characters, is what they would do for a overall structure, because this game was basically, let's get from point A to point B and do all this fun stuff along the way. And I think that it would kind of do a disservice to the first Last of Us if they basically just said, oh god, Ellie has to now get herself from, you know, wherever to California, or, you know, some like just a repeat of the plot structure. I think would be kind of lame. Do you have any ideas of what they could do to kind of mix that up?
It's so tricky because the game sort of, to me, when I finished it, I thought that's the end of The Last of Us.
Right.
It felt like it sort of concluded, didn't it? I felt like they're going to go have their life. The Fireflies has all been dealt with almost. It sort of felt like an end almost. But then we heard about they announced the domains for the next games, and it got me excited again because I did enjoy the game. I want to see more from that Naughty Dog and that franchise. But for me, the game sort of ended almost, didn't it? Like it sort of felt like a conclusion.
To me, it was a perfect ending. I know a lot of people were kind of like, there wasn't like an epic moment or a huge set piece or some crazy boss, or the whole world is saved. It kind of, though, kept it more realistic for me, because it was kind of like, hey, this is just the closing of the chapter of their journey. And there were some interesting quotes from some of the leads on the project about, this is the end of Ellie and Joel's journey, and most people took that to be, we're done with those characters. But then they kind of clarified in follow-up interviews saying, no, it's the end of this journey. So they're giving themselves total leeway to do whatever. And I'm sure, you know, sales and profits and stuff, you know, for better or worse, do factor in. But again, it's a game that was so perfect in its execution that I think, again, it would be such a huge letdown if they're like, now Ellie she adopts a young boy and they're going to travel across the, you know, like that would be so.
Yeah, it's just a bit. I don't know how they. That's what I don't know. I mean, they could. I'm guessing they're very clever with their writing and stuff. They know what they're doing. But for me, it feels like I don't know where they could go next to make it entertaining and gripping enough for me to want to play it. I'm obviously going to play it, but
sure. And part of me thinks like this is a good reason why maybe they shouldn't do another game, because if you look at Uncharted, like that was about, hey, Drake goes on these awesome adventures, the gameplay's pretty cool, and we have sort of this awesome crew of characters that are fun and you know, a little bit humorous, and so you could basically throw them into any situation. You got Sully, you got Drake, Chloe, and what's his first girlfriend's name, the blonde chick. Blonde chick, something, whatever her name is.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Forgetting her name. But you could kind of throw them in. You're like, go search for this treasure. Go to this faraway land, and it would work. Here, though, I mean, the world is interesting in the sense like the clickers are cool and the landscapes are really beautiful, but the overall story itself is kind of generic apocalypse stuff. So it's not like, oh, now we're going to just take Ellie and Joel and throw them into we're going to put them down south in Texas and Florida. Like that wouldn't work. It would feel cheap. So
I mean, for me, the world felt generic, but it didn't really feel generic as well. It also had little bits of stuff that sort of made it stand out, and it made it feel a little bit different as well. I mean, to me, it felt like a completely unique experience when I was playing it. I know the story feels similar to like some movies and stuff, but for me, like playing the game felt like a unique game that I had never played before.
Right, and I think even furthermore, if they just did another travel across the country, I mean, I think that you could probably set up something interesting with sort of a clash between the Fireflies and maybe like Tommy's survivors or something of this,
Exactly, yeah.
you know, some sort of, I don't know. I do think they would need to progress the story. I don't think like a year later, Joel and Ellie are back on the trail is like a really convincing storyline. But something else I think would be really odd, and I don't know how it would work, is, you know, Drake existed on the PlayStation 3 and the PS Vita, I guess, but basically had the same look. If they go to the PlayStation 4, like, is it going to be too jarring to see everything basically recreated? And I don't know that they could just take the same assets and up-res them. I feel like they would have to... Do you know what I'm saying? Does that seem like it would create some dissonance? Yeah.
I think Naughty Dog have a very like iconic style this generation, don't they? From the first game, it all feels very, very similar. But I think they could easily bring that across. I mean, it would look perhaps a little bit more realistic almost, because it does have that sort of not cartoony look, but it's very Naughty Dog, and you can tell it's a Naughty Dog game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the colours are very vibrant and stuff in this game, which is quite unique for games, to be honest.
Right.
But I think it can come across quite well on the PS4. I think we'd be like, when we see the first like gameplay from it, we're gonna be like, oh my god.
Yeah, I hope
PS4's
so.
one of the generation and stuff, and it's just like.
I hope so. I think The Last of Us is probably the best looking game of current gen. I don't feel like wishy-washy about saying that. I think I can safely say that. Another point just about the sequels quickly before we move to the DLC is a lot of the NPCs were killed off in this game. So you couldn't do like a bunch of fun callbacks. They kind of did that in Uncharted, like, oh, Chloe reappears and ta-da, fan service. But, you know, Henry and Sam, gone. Tess, gone. Bill, you have to assume, is just getting old and crazy in his little town. And then, you know, I guess David, but he was killed as well. Never mind.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Marlene obviously was dead as well, wasn't she?
Marlene's dead. So you have Tommy, who wasn't very interesting. He was just sort of a foil for Joel for that portion of the game. So, again, they did, I think, set it up to basically make it Last of Us just its own thing. And
I mean, they could have easily left Marlene like laying there, couldn't they?
Right,
and they could have opened up the story. I was so glad he went back and sort of finished her off.
Absolutely, yeah. They definitely made it a concise and boom. This is The Last of Us. Close the book. If they want to dive back in, part of me does think, even though it would be awkward, that they would choose to go somewhere else in the world. I think though that would be, it's a risky move either way. And so part of me just says, do something new. As much as I love this game, let's keep it as a cherished piece of itself, and you can always think back to The Last of Us is this perfect experience of Joel and Ellie. But there is more of the game with or without sequel, because they are doing single-player DLC for the first time. Where do you think they're going to go with that?
I reckon we're going to be seeing Henry and Sam, maybe.
Bring them back from the dead?
Yeah, like we play as them, almost, maybe. I don't know, it's a loose thing, but... Or we play Joel before the whole thing actually starts. I don't know. With Tess, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a duo of some sort. I've heard people say Henry and Sam. I've heard people say Joel and Tess. I've heard people say Ellie and Marlene. I've heard people say Tommy and his wife. The interesting one to me, though, just story-wise, was Tommy and Joel in between Sarah's death and the start of the game. I thought that could be kind of a...
Yeah, that would be good.
Because we know that Joel continues on, and so we have invested interest in him. We know Tommy continues on. If we're playing Henry and Sam, it's like, okay, we're just going to play these guys for 4 hours, and then they're going to blow their own heads off. So, like, what's the emotional investment there? There really isn't any. So,
I mean, they could potentially extend a story on. I mean, I'm not sure that will happen. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Just like extends it off after the ending.
That's an interesting idea, and it's a really dangerous one too, because like they could really flub it up horribly, or it could be really cool because they're basically back in quote safety. So you could do any number of, you know, oh, they have to go get something for a little bit, or they have to defend the village, and that could be,
interesting, couldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
It could make it a lot more towards a sequel. I mean, they could add it on. They could be overrun with fireflies or
Right.
clickers or something. They have to like escape the country or something, and we're like,
They could do a little bit of like what Mass Effect 2 did between 2 and 3, where they kind of bridge the gap and create this
yeah.
epilogue and be like, oh, you know, it's been 4 years of them living peacefully, and then some craziness comes up and strikes them down. It'll be interesting. Go ahead.
I think it's gonna be almost like a bridge, so it's gonna just cross the games over, almost like a 400 days for Walking Dead, and just makes us really want a sequel again, like almost like a tease.
Yeah, it'll be cool because there's a lot of these. There's, like you mentioned, The Walking Dead 400 Days that ties season 1 and 2 together. There's the BioShock Infinite single player DLC that's being built from the ground up, and then now there's this Last of Us DLC that's being built on top of the game. And I really do appreciate that it's not cut missions. I think we went through a really bad period probably a year or two ago with like Assassin's Creed and games like that where it was just random cut little missions, and that felt so dull. This, on the other hand, should be pretty exciting.
I mean, yeah, we had like they did say they cut out quite a bit of the game. Like this is like they cut out portions of the whole game and they literally restructured it. The ending was actually quite controversial within the studio. They said it didn't go well down with tests, or it didn't go down with some of the crew actually within the Naughty Dog. So I'm quite glad that the director like really like pushed that ending down, because I thought it was a good ending.
Yeah, I did read that they initially had it more like very decided, like, oh, you could tell that Ellie believed him and they were going to live happily ever after, and then they went back and kind of made it more like, I don't know what happens. Another thing I thought was interesting, I don't know if you saw this too, but you know the doctor sequence towards the end of the game where you can, you know, shoot the doctors or leave them. That wasn't playable previously. That was a cutscene, and then one of the team members pushed to have it be playable to add more emotional oomph to the end.
You shot one, didn't you? I shot all of them.
And apparently you don't have to shoot any, they were saying. Apparently there is a way to just walk that guy back and then detach her. Which I thought that was one of the coolest parts of the entire game, just because, you know, it's a game with no choice in the sense of it's a linear story, but there are moments where it feels like you're so in that character of Joel or Ellie, and you are making decisions even though you're really not, and that was one that I thought exemplified that the very, very best. If we want to touch on the game,
would you have liked like some? Sorry, but would you like to like some sort of decision making in there, or was you quite happy with it being a very linear story?
I don't know, because as I was playing this, I had dreams. I mentioned this to you before. Dreams of this like open world survival game where it really was just, you know, 2 bullets and you got to make do with what you can, and much more crafting. And I think though that as much as I like that idea and I think choice would be cool, we sometimes get carried away and don't realize how tricky that is. And you look at something like State of Decay and how messy that gets at points. And you kind of need that linear structure to deliver a picture-perfect experience.
Definitely. I mean, we touched on multiplayer a little bit, didn't we? We done a little gameplay of it that you will see on either of our channels quite soon. But what do you think of the multiplayer so far?
I really like the multiplayer. I don't know that it has the lasting power, obviously, of something like Call of Duty. I think it maybe fits into the same type of multiplayer as like Assassin's Creed, where it's like, oh, this is really cool, and the people that are super into the game play it. But I love that they were able to transition the feel of single player to multiplayer. I thought that was, didn't you think that was like really a pretty cool achievement?
It's very well done, wasn't it? Like you can craft stuff in the game, you can purchase stuff almost like pills, and you just like, it feels very like tense as well. I mean, you were like trying to like team up on people. It was like you die very, very quickly, and it's almost like a Gears of War, like you're crawling along the floor, like trying to get to safety, and it's just definitely very well done, but it's just lacking those modes almost. Like it's just like 2 modes. I would like perhaps like a horde mode almost, or like where the clickers are like coming at you all the time and you're like trying to like fend them off and stuff. That'd be really cool.
I think that would be super cool. I know the game's, you know, focus is sort of on the relationship and the interaction, but they are doing what, 3 or 4 DLC and 1 single player, the rest multiplayer. So if they added some sort of horde mode, I know that's kind of phased out of style, but I like those modes, and I would have a lot of fun.
If it's done well, it could be a great addition to the game. I mean, some horde modes are done terribly. Like I don't try and think of an example, but like Resident Evil, but stuff like Gears of War's done well. If they can implement it well, it could be a really interesting element.
Yeah, what I think would be really great is if they had sort of expansive maps, and then, you know, you had to send one of your teammates out to like go pick up crafting supplies or something. So there was sort of a little bit of that, again, integrating a lot of the mechanics. And I think that the success of the multiplayer is sort of a testament to their gameplay design. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but I felt like the gameplay was nearly perfect in Last of Us. And the fact that it carries over so well from single player to multiplayer and possibly even horde mode sort of speaks to how fine-tuned all their systems are.
Sorry if you can hear my dog in the background, but Yeah, I think the combat was really good. It's that combat with the clickers and the runners. It took me a little while just to literally get that down to like a T, but as soon as I done that first bit of combat, I felt like it flowed quite well after that.
Absolutely.
The clickers and yeah.
Yup. It is a fantastic game. Overall, just little touchstones. Any favorite moments that you had that you'd like to shout out here? My favorites, quickly, just in case you have the same ones, were that I mentioned in my review was the giraffe sequence, of course.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first time you get to control Ellie, and then I really love the backyard combat with Bill when you were kind of going through his town.
I like the bit where you change the Ellie and it's like, oh my god, with him being a completely different character. That bit really like surprised me. And the whole end mission was just like, Joe, where you're trying to use the ladder, and then he's just sitting there, and you throughout the whole game you've been doing like where you've been pushing her up, and you've like been doing the whole game for like 12 hours, and she just ignores you. And Joel just turns around and is like, come on. And it's just that simple little thing, simple little touch that I like. It's just the little things that...
Yeah, when they first get to Salt Lake City, that is an absolutely brilliant moment. Real quick before we get out of here, what did you think of the final mission? The sequence in the hospital. I've heard some people say they thought it was terrible and wanted to throw their controller. I've heard some people say that they felt it was, an adrenaline-fueled final push. How did you feel about fighting against all these armored soldiers and kind of having a very combat-heavy last 20 minutes?
For me, it was one of the worst points of the game, for me personally. I don't know why they did that. Especially that very, very last bit where they're just standing there looking at me through the door.
Yeah.
I can't see any way around them. You throw a bottle and it's go absolutely berserk. For me, I just ended up throwing smoke bombs and just running straight through it.
It was one of the weird points because, that last hall where they're all just standing aiming at the door.
Like, what?
We're so used to the enemies sort of pacing around, searching for you, and then you can kind of take them down or not. That was sort of an awkward ending. I understand why they did it, because like, oh, you're at the stronghold and kind of fight these tougher enemies, but it felt a little bit out of place or something. Nonetheless, the game is freaking fantastic. And final words: do you hope they make a sequel or not?
I can't say no because I love the game so much, and I know Naughty Dog. I trust them so much with that game. They can do something. I hope they don't do Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
I hope they do Last of Us 2 and then do like a whole new IP. But that's what I want to see.
That's really interesting. If it's between Uncharted 4 and Last of Us 2, I take Last of Us 2. So
I guess Uncharted for me is a great series. End it now, please, and just move on.
Yeah, they've done a lot. 4 games, including the Vita one. I like that thinking right there. That way we can say yes to The Last of Us 2 and still get a new PlayStation 4 IP maybe a couple years down the line.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys want to see more sort of chats and just casual conversations about games and stuff, let us know in the comments. And by liking the video, if you want to check out GhostRobo, there'll be a link in the description. But I hope you guys had a nice day, a nice Sunday. It's very, very hot where I am at the moment. So I'm like baking in my room. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Bye-bye.